Hello friends, welcome back. It's time for another video. And today, it's a viewer request video. How exciting is that? I actually have viewers. This one comes from Ryan. Hi, I'm Rye. Ryan loves to write. I'll put her channel thing in the description so that you can access her. I actually need you closer. Come on. Ryan's channel's great. I have to live vicariously through her because she's out playing golf, going to dinners, shopping, checking out bookstores, playing with her family. It's just great. I don't do any of those things. So anyway, if that sounds interesting to you, I'm sure she'd appreciate a follow or new subscriber, whatever. She asked, probably 4 months ago. It's been a while. Sorry, Rye. She asked, what books inspired me to start writing? So we're going to have to go back a ways. So everyone pile into the DeLorean. We're going back in time to the late 80s, early 90s, when I was in high school, like middle school, high school, just that transition area there. I don't know what age, 11, 12, 13, 14, those ages. That's where we're going. Okay? Insert weird time travel effect. Woo! Woo! Okay. And let's get into some books. These are not books that I enjoy. This is not a list of every book that I've ever enjoyed reading. That's what's in the umpteen shelves behind me and in piles downstairs and in my office. These were the most influential books for inspiring me to start writing. And I'll tell you, not really the plots or anything like that so much, but why and how they contributed to me starting to write. And I wish I could see them all, but they're way down here, so we gotta bend over. And they're kind of not in an order. Oh, right, I meant to mention Ryan. She's written a fantasy. She hasn't published it, but she's written it. She's writing a Regency romance, and she's about to write or start outlining a sci-fi dystopia. So the reason I wanted to mention that is because there's going to be a lot of sci-fi dystopias in this. It doesn't happen to be the first book that I picked up, but there will be, so, giddy up. Okay, this is One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I think his name's Alexander. Do they actually get the first name anywhere? Whatever. Okay, Solzhenitsyn anyway. I have a bunch of his books. They're all good. Cancer Ward's really good. And there's the Gulag one. Anyway, this is, as it says, a day in the life of Ivan Denisovich, and he's a prisoner of war in a gulag. And it literally is just a day in his life. And these are going to be a little bit thematic, and people may disagree with my reasoning behind making them thematically linked, but this guy hides food. He knows how to appreciate the food that he is given. He knows how to... They're building a prison on another site, another prison. Prisoners building prisons. It might be an administrative wing or something, actually. I don't know, but they're putting up bricks. And it's freezing cold, right? He knows how to play the game where you take just enough materials from the night shift to burn so that you can keep your mortar warm so that your own bricklaying projects can actually continue. But, don't take too much of it because then you'll have like wars between shifts. I like it. If I'm remembering the book correctly, and I have read it several times, I like it because he's in a bad place and doesn't give up hope. He makes the best of a bad situation. And we're going to see a bit of that, okay? But honestly, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich is something that every single one of you should read. Even if just to prove me wrong about how the story went, because it has been about, it's probably been 20 years since I last read it, but it was 35 years or 37 years when I first read it. So anyway, moving on. Where do I put the moving on pile? Okay. Again, these are a little bit random. Okay, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, okay? There's like 5 of these now. What did that give me when I first read that when I was younger? I had been reading Hardy Boys, Choose Your Own Adventure, Fighting Fantasy, which is just choose your own adventure, except you have to roll a die, which of course I refuse to do because screw that, I'm not dying, I'm reading the story, which is why I never got into D&D. I refused to roll the die. Anyway, you move up to, the big boy books that you feel are absolutely impenetrable sometimes when you read the forewords. Sometimes the foreword is enough to knock you right off. You don't want to read it anymore. That's a different book I'm talking about. But with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it was a fun sci-fi that had humor in it. And I'd only ever really been exposed to, as far as I remember, joke books where it's just a list of jokes, and real books. And The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was the first time that I saw it combined, where it's like a comedy book. The only other place where I was exposed to that was the Sierra Space Quest games. Well, most of the Sierra games had a bit of humor in it, like Leisure Suit Larry and whatever, but Space Quest specifically because Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is sci-fi. So, I mean, if you haven't read Hitchhiker's Guide, you definitely should. And all of them, whose names I can't remember. I mean, there's So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and there's Mostly Harmless, and there's 2 others in there whose names elude me for the moment. Okay. Let's go. What do we got? Let's do this before we get into our sci-fi, our dystopias. We'll do this. Okay, George Orwell. Keep the Aspidistra Flying. I hope that actually was in focus. Gordon Comstock. Okay, I'd forgotten the main character's name. Anyway, it's been, again, like 35-ish years since I've read this. Yeah, I might have read it a few times during high school. So whatever, however many years, who cares? Keep the Aspidistra Flying is the perfect novel for everyone with like teenage angst and like fuck the system and I'm not climbing your corporate ladder. I'm going to go do what I want. We all felt like that. I don't know if the young people feel like that anymore, but we certainly did. I'm Gen X, by the way. None of us wanted to play the game. Wanted to take our chances. And I'm sure it was like that in the 60s, as more so, I think, even in the 60s. This is about a guy who's like, yep, screw it. I'm going to live poor. and he gets a job at like a used bookstore, and he's got one pair of socks that he keeps darning. I think he's got a hole in his shoe leather, and he puts a piece of cardboard in, if I'm remembering these things correctly. And eventually, well, he has to make a choice. So, whatever, story aside, what did this contribute to me wanting to write? Well, I could write the story of what I felt. And I know it's a subtle thing. You think, well, of course you can write what you feel, but like, here it was. Here was everything I felt in a book, and it was perfect. So, anyway, we'll move on from that. This video will take for friggin' ever if I don't hurry up. We're going to skip to something else. Just quick here. Well, not quick. Okay, sci-fi-ish dystopia. A Clockwork Orange. I don't know if I said it yet, but one of the reasons why I was so long in doing this video is because I thought everyone's already read these books. No one's going to care, right? Like everyone's read A Clockwork Orange. There's a few things about A Clockwork Orange. Okay. Very similar to Keep the Aspidistra Flying, not in any way that you're thinking, except youthful rebellion, eventual acceptance. Not Alex, the main character, but what are the other two? Georgie and Dim, I think, are their names. They grew up to be cops. You know, I mean, I think in the book it was, you know, so that they could act out their aggression without actually getting in trouble anymore. But whatever, the point is they grew up and they became the establishment as opposed to fighting against it. Okay, that's one thing, and that's sort of linked with Keep the Aspidistra Flying. The other thing is, how did this get me, or how did it influence my writing or inspired me to write? I loved the fact that he just made up his own words. Awesome. It was a little tricky to read, but I had a young mind and I could do it. But what I really like, and you'll see that with the books that are coming, I like dystopias that might not be dystopias. And you're going to yell at me a lot for the next few books. But I love a dystopia where you're not really sure. Okay, we'll start it off with this, Clockwork Orange. It's the lightest, which is why we're starting it off with this. It's just a society that has like a youth gang problem. I mean, it's just what the UK was, I think, when this was written. I think. Like, don't quote me on that. I've never lived there and I'm not a historian. The dystopia comes from the government intervention, which took away his free will, Alex's free will. That comes up a lot in these other books. It doesn't make it a dystopia for anyone else living in this society. It only makes it a nightmare for Alex, and I'm not going to go into that any further. But it's not actually a dystopian society. The society seems fine. The government tried something. If I'm remembering the book correctly, the ending, like there was backlash and stuff for that. Let's move on. We'll go into, this is not my original copy of this. I don't know where my original went. If you can't read it, it says 1984. Okay, again, everyone in existence has read this book, or at least pretended to. George Orwell. Okay, I had to take a drink or whatever I told you I did. Okay, 1984. So, dystopia? You know what's really, really funny? It's not. It is to the reader. The reader. You and me. People who live here, now, or then. But think about living in the story. The proletariat. They've got cheap beer. It tastes like piss, but they've got it. They got porn, right? We'll come back to that. Lucky you. They got songs to sing. They're happy enough. That's why they don't rebel. That's why the proles will never rise up and take over, which is why it's safe for them to say that the proles should rise up and take it, because they'll never ever do it because they're satisfied enough. Who else is happy? Happy. Whatever. Complacent. Whatever. Good enough. Happy enough. Well, the ups, the uppity ups, all the upper members, well, they control everything, don't they? So they're happy enough. They don't want to see anything changed. So they're not living in a dystopia. The proles aren't living in a dystopia. Who is? Well, the middle class. Middle class folk are living in a dystopia. However, even some of them, I know they're using doublethink to get through it all, but even some of them, like, I forget the guy's name, maybe Smiley? I don't remember. The guy who was editing the next edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. Smythe, maybe? He seemed really passionate about, the elimination of words, editing that dictionary. He didn't seem to be living in a dystopia. No, he was sort of eliminated a few days afterwards, or, brought to whatever that room was, 101? Something like that. But anyway, looking at it from the character's point of view, or from the world inhabitants' points of view, not everyone thought this was a dystopia. And I held on to that. Okay, that's what it brought and is bringing to my own writing. I like dystopias that aren't necessarily We, Yevgeny Zamyatin. This is one of the greatest books you could read. More important than 1984. Why? Because one day, George Orwell read We and said, I got to write a book like that one day. And that's how you ended up with 1984. So if you want to read the book that inspired it, We is the way to go. What's We about? We is about a glorious society. They live under a dome. All of the buildings are glass. The sidewalks are glass. Everything is pristine. They base everything off of logic and mathematics. They are the perfect society. And what they're doing is they're getting all of their greatest artists, poets, all the people that produce all the beautiful things, and they're getting them to write propaganda to put into a spaceship that they're going to launch out into space and convince other worlds that this is the way to live and that they should all do this. Okay. That is what it is. Oh, I didn't go back to the 1984 porn thing. This is how my brain works. I wanted to talk about AI for 10 seconds. Julia, in 1984. What does she do for a living? Come on. Yeah, she repairs the kaleidoscope machines. What are they? They take bits and pieces from books, premises, and whatnot, paragraphs, throw them together into new books, porn mostly, and print them off for the proletariat to read, to keep them entertained. It's AI. Orwell invented AI. Just wanted to let you know that. Anyway, going back to We. I mean, we're already talking about sex. So in We, since everything's made of glass, everything, if you want to have sex, you actually have to, I think it's pay, but you have to like register to like get a permit to lower your blinds so that you can do it in private. I don't know why anyone bothered. Why not just become exhibitionists? The reason I'm saying this is because, in a way, that is what has happened to my books. And I have an S-ton of glass in my books. Anyway, so there's a little bit of something, and there's logic. The other thing, okay, we're going back to the mind control. In We, no one's under mind control, but the government's about to start it. I think they might have done a little bit of testing. They're trying to eliminate all emotion, like Vulcan or something. But so the government's starting to actually do like brain surgery on people in order to eliminate it. 1984 is actually not. It's not a society that can last. Sorry. Because they haven't actually controlled anyone until the very end, and then they shoot them. So, like, don't argue with me about that, okay? But the point is that in the next book, far more control. Ready? Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Everyone should read this. Everyone should read Brave New World. I love it. Love it to death. Read it a bunch. I mean, the copy's fallen apart. Every book that I just showed you, other than the 1984, which I think I just replaced, is fallen apart. Okay. Brave New World is a society, much like We, that lives kind of under a dome. I think they do live under a dome, but I mean, it might be enormous. I don't recall. And their society is conditioned from birth, every single member, to be in different castes and love what they do. And they can't be unhappy. It's almost impossible. Some of the a little bit higher ups could start to waver, but then they have a drug called Soma that gets them right back on track. So they have total control over absolutely everyone, and nothing will ever change. It's perfect. I'll have to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Red Rising, I hated that book so much because I've read Brave New World. Red Rising is what would happen if the government was actually idiots, warmongers, and didn't actually know how to control their population. It's the exact same thing and completely different at the same time. It's all the caste nonsense, whatever. I'm not saying that it's poorly written. I'm not saying that the author read Brave New World, copied it, and put it in like a fantasy land. I'm just saying that because I read Brave New World, I could not in any way enjoy Red Rising. I didn't even finish it. Maybe the ending makes up for 75% of the book being Capture the Flag. I don't know. I don't know. But I hated Red Rising. I think I'm the only person in the world who did. It seems like everyone else is their favorite book ever. Well, that's to you. Read Brave New World. Now, the only way you could screw up the society is by introducing a random element, which they did. Someone from a savage reservation, the people outside the city. There's also a tiny bit of that in We, just so you know. These books are all linked. Now, we were talking thematically about dystopias that aren't dystopias. This isn't a dystopia to anyone who lives in it. John, actually, I don't know if his name's John Savage. I think his name's just John. John Savage is actually from Demolition Man. There's been a ton of stuff, movies and stuff made based off of Brave New World. Demolition Man is Brave New World. Equilibrium with the cleric gun shooting stupid shit, that's Brave New World. That entire thing is Brave New World, except for the Zeppelins, because they weren't in that. Anyway, John comes from the Savage Reservation, and even he at first is like, this is incredible. Everything about this is amazing. He doesn't think it's a dystopia. He thinks where he came from, if I'm remembering correctly, is a bit of a dystopia, actually. But then as he learns more and more about the people and recognizes that it'll never change, he can't go home, he can't stay here, he has to make a choice about what's going to happen, and he makes his choice. And that's that, and you should read it. How did it influence me? In the same way as everything else. Dystopias that aren't quite dystopias, and yet they are, blah, 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 whatever. It's a wonderful book, and made me want to write stuff like that. Okay, last book. One that you might not have read. You probably haven't. This book I read in 1991. And the only reason I read it was because of the film that came out. I'll admit that. The film was so awesome that I went out and got the book and read it. And that's Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs. And then I bought everything else he'd ever written and read all of that. This thing's seen better days too. It's all cracked and whatever. Let me hang you, Mark. Let me hang you. Please, Mark, let me hang you. Sure, baby. He pulls her brutally to her feet and pins her hands behind her. No, Mark, no. Okay, apparently this was broken open at a sex scene. You know, young me knew what he wanted. But that book, it's drug abuse, sexual encounters of all kinds, and insanity and freedom. I'm not even going to pretend to tell you what the plot's about. I don't even remember what the plot's about. What I remember is the feeling I got from reading it. And that was, holy crap. I can write anything and it can be published. And I don't mean garbage. What I mean is I can get away with anything. Anything that comes into my head, if I feel I need to say it, I can get away with it. Not like, you know, the classics or whatever. Like, you didn't, when I was young, it was like, okay, if you want to be a serious writer, you have to write like, I don't know, Charles Dickens or whatever. You know, you had to write that stuff. Naked Lunch showed me that I could write what came into my head as it came into my head down onto the page. The end. I could run with it. It was done. There's not even any editing. This is in the movie. There was some editing to that book, obviously. But in the movie, it says that you can't edit, you can't revise. Because, I'm not going to quote it because I don't remember it, but like the tumbling out of the words, the raw, real thoughts on the page that you, the author, put on the page, the reader reads those, and that's the connection between you and the reader. They can feel how you felt when you wrote it. You edit the shit out of that, and they get nothing. They get half the experience. They get a quarter. They get nothing. They get no experience. Maybe what you wrote was too raw, so you just cut it out, and they get nothing. So the movie, that part of it anyway, was arguing for stream of consciousness writing with no editing if possible. But obviously that book was edited for publication, whatever. The end. The only thing that I wanted to say is that not only did all of these books influence me in little and large ways, but something else influenced me at the same time, and those were old-time radio programs. So just for fun, let's listen to a minute or two or whatever of an old-time radio program. And I'll see you next week or the week after. Bye.
It was hot, boiling hot that night. I wanted to grab a beer and turn in early. So what happens? I get my beer, but with it comes a gunshot, a beautiful woman in trouble, and murder.
From the pen of Raymond Chandler, outstanding author of crime mystery, CBS presents his most famous character, brought to you now in The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. With Gerald Moore starred as Philip Marlowe, we bring you tonight's unusual story, Red Wind.
There was a rough desert wind blowing into Los Angeles that evening. It was one of those hot, dry Santa Anas that come down through the mountain passes and curl your hair and make your nerves jump and your skin itch. On nights like that, every booze party ends in a fight, and meek little housewives feel the edge of a carving knife and study their husbands' necks. Anything can happen when the Santa Ana blows in from the desert. I closed up my office early. I got tired of reading Philip Marlowe, private investigator, backwards on the ground glass of my office door. So I locked up and decided a nice cold beer would taste good before I went up to my apartment.
Killer up again, Mr. Marlin?
Marlowe.
Marlin.
Yeah, Marlin's a fish.
Yeah, I know.
Marlin's also the name of a lady on the radio. Marlin, Mary, the story of.
Yeah, my wife listens to it.
Yeah, good for her.
Hey. Hey, you bartender. Another rye.
Yeah, that drunk again.
What do you expect in this business? Autograph hounds?
Make it sappy. You hear?
Be right with you, sport. Gotta draw this man a beer. Crying out loud, these stumblebums.
Hey, Bud.
You got another customer, Backus.
Hey, Bud, you seen a lady in here lately?
A lady?
Tall, good-looking, brown hair, a print bolero jacket, and a blue silk dress.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Nobody like that, Spinian.
All right, straight scotch, fast.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
As the man drank, I noticed the drunk was grinning at him. And then, without changing his grin, the drunk swept a gun from somewhere so fast it was just a blur coming out. Made a couple of hard snaps and a little smoke. Very little.
You other guys, don't move.